Alcohol is meant to be spilled on those you despise. We don't need a dropout like you, so just go back where you came from. No one truly welcomes a broke dropout. Thinking you can talk to me as a dropout, you're a century too early. At my welcome party at the head office, the elite manager, called Kevin, said this to me, who had a low level of education. Then, he went as far as to pour beer over my head. I was utterly stunned by the sudden turn of events. Kevin continued to berate me, but later, during a gathering of all employees called by the CEO, everyone's attention was drawn to the person standing next to the CEO, Mr. Thompson. Let me introduce my right-hand man. With these words, Kevin was about to face divine retribution for his actions. My name is Daniel. Ever since I was a child, I've been known as a prodigy. I could quickly master anything from reading and writing to arithmetic, which made me feel constrained and bored by my surroundings. But even I have my weaknesses. One of them is sports. Being good at studies but not at sports, my classmates would mock me as bookworm Daniel, or compare me to the tortoise in The Tortoise and the Hare. But it was a natural talent I was born with. Yet, I was so good at studying that I was allowed to skip grades in a touring school, and before I knew it, I was studying high school level mathematics. I remember Mr. Carter, the tutor, being taken aback by me. He probably couldn't stand the idea of a student being smarter than him. As I entered elementary school, I found the classes even more boring since I was already familiar with everything taught. Feeling like I was hearing the same thing over and over, I would audaciously sleep during class, which even got me scolded by my teacher, Mr. Smith. Daniel is such a weirdo. Even when we talk about games, he's not interested because he's such a model student. It feels like he's sneering at me. I don't want anything to do with him. I had no interest in the whispered rumors of my classmates. I couldn't connect with my classmates and would always be reading challenging books at my desk. Often, when I tried to talk about things I was interested in, no one would listen, so I kept my distance from people. Being naturally shy, I gradually closed myself off and eventually stopped going to school altogether. I spent my days studying at home or advancing through grades at the tutoring school. Feeling an emptiness inside, as if something was missing, this continued even as I moved on to middle school. That guy's been a no-show since elementary school. He doesn't talk much, does he? Unable to fit in with my new classmates and not knowing how to, I reluctantly went to middle school for my parents' sake, but eventually, I stopped going altogether. Instead, I started spending my days reading books at the public library. You are here reading every day, aren't you? Aren't you supposed to be at school? I can go because I don't fit in. That must be tough. The library staff, recognizing me as a regular, expressed their concern for me. I was very grateful for that. The librarian, a kind man who listened to me, made me feel comfortable sharing my thoughts without resistance. He would laugh heartily and say, "Well, it's not unusual for young people to go through various things. Just do what you want to do," treating me without judgment and allowing me to frequent the library. Meeting this man at the library was one of the reasons I didn't lose myself completely during my student years. Then one day, as I continued to take refuge in the library, I had a shocking encounter. Drawn to a particular book on design, I became utterly engrossed and fell deeply in love with it. It was the first time I felt such a shock. "Hey, I'm borrowing this book." "Oh, you're quite enthusiastic today. Did you find an amazing book?" "Yes, I did. See you later. Take care on your way home." After borrowing the book from the library, I became so obsessed with reading it at home that I couldn't even eat. Dear Daniel has been reading in his room ever since he got home. He's so engrossed that he can hardly eat his meals. My mom, worried about me staying shut in my room reading books ever since I got home. She mentioned this to my dad, who had just returned from work, and he seemed amused by it, offering a small smile. It's good that he's found something he's passionate about. If you're worried, you could take some sandwiches to Daniel's room later. That sounds like a good idea. If you say so, I'll do just that. With a cheerful mood, Mom headed to the kitchen to start making sandwiches. Despite all the worry I've caused them, my parents never blamed me and always watched over me, which I truly appreciate. With their support, I spent the 3 years of middle school mostly self-studying and dedicating myself to learning about design. At 15, encouraged by my parents, I took the Mensa test. Mensa is an organization for individuals with high IQs, requiring a score within the top 2% of the population for membership. The organization aims to provide a platform for intellectual exchange among its members. My parents thought that through Mensa, I might find friends with whom I could connect, so they encouraged me to take the test. And as expected, I passed on my first try. I was truly grateful to my parents for trying to find a place where I belonged. Among the events organized by Mensa members, such as gaming competitions, quiz contests, and barbecues, which were easy for middle schoolers to participate in, I gradually began to make friends with whom I could engage in conversation. It felt like my closed heart was beginning to open up once again. "My name's Alex. Nice to meet you." Among them, I hit it off with Alex, a man in his 20s, who treated me like a brother. "Why did you join Mensa?" "I couldn't fit in at school, so my parents suggested I try Mensa." "Then you should be grateful to your parents. Having you here makes things a lot more fun for me." Alex grinned and said that to me. I can't express how happy those words made me feel. Having no siblings of my own, I was thrilled to be treated this way, cherished like a younger brother, and it felt like I was learning about morals from him. Time passed, and after graduating from middle school, I started working at the design company I had always dreamed of. Having had a tough time in both elementary and middle school, nobody around me insisted that I go to high school. My parents said that if I ever wanted to attend high school, I could go to night school or take the GED to eventually go to college. I took advantage of that leniency, but I'm really grateful to be able to prioritize a job I love. Despite my struggles with school, I've always enjoyed being in an environment where everyone is dedicated and striving for excellence in design. I'm a bit lost with this part. Let me see. You see, Daniel, this is how you do it. I see. That was really helpful, thank you. Despite being shy and not used to approaching people, I became able to ask senior employees for advice to learn more about design. Feeling myself blending in with others so naturally, contrary to my past struggles with socializing, filled me with a sense of joy deep inside. Although I was still too shy to show it outwardly, I felt like I had made significant emotional progress. It was after some time of training in the field of design. I had received several offers to transfer to the headquarters, but I turned them all down because I preferred the branch office environment where I could focus solely on design. Moreover, as my design skills sharpened, so did my communication abilities through interactions with other employees, which made the work even more rewarding. Daniel, I'm a bit confused about this part. This is how you should do it. Thank you so much, that was very helpful. Responding to a junior colleague's question, I watched them hurry off with a sense of nostalgia, thinking they reminded me of myself when I first started working here. I was even more motivated to stay involved in this work as long as my juniors relied on me. As if reflecting my intentions, I became well regarded for teaching various skills to junior employees. Gone were the days of solitude I experienced as a student. I now found life enjoyable. Thus, I spent many years immersed in design at the branch office. Then, in the spring when I turned 30, I could no longer refuse the transfer to the headquarters and decided to make the move. Thinking it was time to stop insisting on my own way, I took on this new challenge with a fresh mindset. My name is Daniel. I look forward to working with all of you. Known as a genius designer, I was welcomed by most at the headquarters, marking the beginning of a new chapter in my life. However, that was true for everyone except for one person. "Hey, do this for me instead." Oh, yes. Kevin, the elite manager who graduated from a prestigious university and is known for his fast track to success, never even made eye contact with me. Right after I started working at the headquarters, Kevin brusquely handed me some documents and quickly left. The documents required completion by the next day, and it seemed Kevin had intentionally assigned this task to me. Despite being treated this way multiple times, I didn't mind much since I loved my job and considered it part of the work. However, I just couldn't bring myself to like Kevin's attitude. If this had happened during my school days, Kevin's harassment alone would have been enough to break me mentally. But now, stronger than before, I managed to shrug off Kevin's behavior and focus on my work at the headquarters. A few days later, a welcome party for me was organized by the other employees at a bar after work. Drinks were served, and we were about to toast. "Welcome to the headquarters, Daniel. I've heard from the CEO about your positive attitude. We're truly glad to have someone like you on our team. Your experience from the branch office will surely be valuable here, so please give it your all." During the speech, the female employee who was organizing the party turned to me and said those words. Then, she directed her gaze to all the gathered employees and continued her speech. "We surely have much to learn from Daniel as well. Let's join forces for the growth of our company. It's been a long speech, but here's to Daniel's future success. Cheers." Cheers. As the female organizer raised her glass for the toast, the other employees followed suit, each raising their glass in celebration. "Do you have a type when it comes to girls, Daniel?" "Hey, that sounds like you're already attracted to him, Daniel. You might want to steer clear of her." "Why not? And what does it have to do with you, Ryan?" The conversation with my colleagues was lively and enjoyable. Perhaps because of the alcohol, everyone was more talkative than usual. "Daniel, are you drinking okay, or are you strong with alcohol?" "Well, it seems I don't get drunk easily." "Looks like we have a drinker here. Don't hold back. It's your welcome party, and have some more," Ryan cheerfully said as he expertly filled my glass with beer. Then, along with the other employees, I enjoyed the conversation, drinks, and meal with Ryan and the others. After engaging in conversations with my colleagues, I decided to try and close the gap with Kevin and approached him alone. Kevin was eating by himself at a corner table. "Kevin, thank you for coming to my welcome party. Do you like beer? I can pour you some if you'd like," I said. Kevin, maintaining his usual demeanor, didn't even look at me and said, "I don't drink alcohol." But wanting to build a rapport with Kevin, I persisted. "Then, I'll take the alcohol away. I'd like to talk with you, if that's okay." He rebuffed me, saying, "There's nothing I want to talk about with a dropout like you." But then, something Kevin said caught my attention. How did he know I was a high school dropout? I had never shared such information. Kevin, insistent on not speaking to me because of my educational background, seemed to have looked into my personal history. While I was disappointed by Kevin's unwillingness to talk, I was about to leave when something unexpected happened. "Instead, this is what I do with alcohol," Kevin said. Then, picking up a glass filled with beer from nearby, he poured it over my head. Stunned by the sudden act, I couldn't process what had just happened. Looking at Kevin, he was smirking at me. It appeared he had intentionally poured the drink over me. Alcohol is meant to be poured on those you dislike. We don't need a high school dropout here, so just go back home. No one really welcomes a poor dropout like you. As the beer dripped onto the floor, I was dumbfounded by Kevin's words. Kevin seemed to think I was poor and couldn't afford high school. The other employees, married and drunk, were oblivious to our exchange. As Kevin continued to berate me, I became increasingly aware of his insults and almost shouted back. But I held back. Reacting that way would only ruin the welcome party that everyone had put so much effort into. Deciding to distance myself from Kevin, I silently slipped out of the welcome party and made my way home. Thinking I could just come up with some excuse if anyone asked, I left the bar. "Hey, isn't that Daniel?" I was startled by a familiar voice and turned to see CEO, whom I had met for Mensa and had kindly offered me a job at his company, standing outside the bar. Alex. Actually, the CEO was Alex, whom I met for Mensa. Alex pulled me into his company when I didn't want to go to high school, which is why I am here today. But I was just denied that by Kevin. Remembering what Kevin had just done, I felt downcast. Alex looked alarmed to see me drenched in alcohol. "Is that alcohol? What on earth are you doing pouring alcohol over yourself? What about your welcome party?" "The party is still going on inside. The alcohol, well, I had a little mishap, so I thought I'd go change my shirt. Haha." I inadvertently dodged the question and forced a grin. However, Alex gave me a long, doubtful look. Then he let out a huge sigh. "You're really bad at lying. Would you mind telling me what happened?" This time, he smiled kindly. Moved by his kindness that remained unchanged even after our relationship became that of a boss and an employee, I almost burst into tears. I explained everything to him, who then suggested I head home for the day. The next day, at the company meeting, Alex introduced me to all the employees, saying, "Let me introduce my right-hand man." After that, he explained that the reason he transferred me to the headquarters was to prepare me to take over as CEO. He mentioned that I had superior design skills compared to any other employee, and that my communication skills were also up to par, emphasizing that I was the ideal person to lead the company. Alex himself had become interested in venturing into different industries, so he decided to entrust the company to someone like me. Hearing Alex express these thoughts, I felt something welling up inside me as I listened by his side. "I want everyone to understand this. If anyone has any objections, please speak to me," he said. "I'm in favor." Without missing a beat, Ryan, who I had a deep conversation with at the bar yesterday, raised his hand to speak. Ryan continued speaking without hesitation. "My sister works at the branch office, and she told me how much help she received from Daniel. I had the chance to see firsthand what kind of person Daniel is at the drinking party yesterday. I have no objections." Ryan: Me too. He's been so proactive. It's hard to believe he just transferred here, and it's a bit hard to say, but Daniel was even taking on tasks from others without complaining. I would have complained if it were me, but I admired him for that. It's difficult to say who was making those tasks difficult for him," a female employee said, glancing subtly at someone. Everyone's gaze turned in unison to where she looked. At the focal point of all the gathered glances was Kevin. Realizing what was implied, he gave an awkward cough, trying to deflect the situation. Alex sighed, seemingly disappointed. "It looks like there are no objections then. Let's conclude this discussion. Thank you, everyone, and please continue to support Daniel," he said. "Thank you all for your acceptance. I will continue to do my best, so I ask for your continued support." A round of hearty applause was given to me as I greeted them, and I was deeply moved. I was grateful for the support of my colleagues and Alex's help. Could Daniel and Kevin come to my office now? Yes. After the meeting ended, Kevin and I were called into the CEO's office. I responded clearly, but Kevin appeared somewhat sheepish. It was as if he already knew what Alex was about to say. Seriously, he poured alcohol on Daniel yesterday. It's quite something to do such a thing at a welcome party. Didn't he know that Daniel was an acquaintance of Alex? I heard he made fun of Daniel for not attending high school, but to harass someone known to Alex like that. He probably didn't know. That's why he was able to harass him. He was prejudiced against us based on our education too, so he deserved it. He's definitely getting fired. As we moved to the CEO's office with Alex, I could hear the whispers of female employees looking at Kevin. Reacting to that, Kevin, sweating profusely, had already turned pale. "I've heard about yesterday. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Kevin?" As soon as we arrived in the CEO's office, Alex, with a stern expression, broached the subject. Kevin, turning even paler than pale, immediately apologized, which surprised me with his sudden change of demeanor. Despite how he was with me, seeing Kevin act this way in front of Alex made me take a step back in surprise. "I heard he was a dropout," Kevin stammered, trying to make an excuse, but his words were so jumbled it was hard to understand. He seemed like a completely different person from the usual Kevin. To see Kevin so subdued, I realized how intimidating Alex could be when angry. I had never seen him angry before, even though I knew him, so I was even more surprised. "Kevin, I've heard that you've always judged people on their education. What does his not going to college have to do with his job performance? To entrust the company to a dropout. As a Harvard graduate, I could gather more talented individuals and lead the company better than he could." Kevin, having stopped apologizing, stood up as if revived, desperately making his case. He was watching him quietly, and I was speechless at Kevin's unexpected comeback. "Moreover, it seems you've heard that I've been harassing him, but there's absolutely no truth to that. My actions were merely an attempt to guide someone who was resting on his laurels. It's preposterous for him to play the victim. So, how about making me the CEO instead of Daniel?" Kevin, even at this juncture, insisted on being made CEO. But Ailes, looking at Kevin, let out a huge sigh. "Would you still say the same after hearing this?" "Eh?" Then, Alex took something out of his suit. It was a voice recorder. "This was placed on an employee who talked to you at Daniel's welcome party the day before yesterday. I was the one who requested it. It was probably after I had left. After I coincidentally met him. At that time, he told me to leave it to him and sent me home. I realized that this must have been the reason. But I wondered what was recorded, and as I did, Kevin's demeanor rapidly worsened. He turned pale as if back to square one. Seeing Kevin's reaction, Alex smirked. "From your reaction, it seems you know what you've said, Kevin." "No, but that was." "Before you make excuses, let's take a moment to reflect on what you've said." Saying this, he turned on the voice recorder and pressed a play button. The first thing that came through was the sound of employees chatting happily. Then, a conversation between Kevin and what seemed to be Ryan could be heard. "Kevin, I can find Daniel anywhere, do you know? If it's him, he ran off after I threw alcohol at him. Talking to me is a decade too early for him." "What, you threw alcohol at Daniel? Isn't that bad?" "It was self-defense. He kept trying to talk to me, so I did it. Despite him always dumping his work on me, he still came smiling, which annoyed me even more. Oh, and don't bother telling the CEO I harassed Daniel. No evidence will come out. I'll keep that in mind." The conversation, oblivious to being recorded, showed Kevin talking and Ryan hurriedly leaving. After playing the entire recording made by Ryan, Alex turned off the voice recorder. "That's the entirety of what you said at the welcome party. If we get the surveillance footage from the bar, we'll also see you pouring alcohol on Daniel. I'd like to settle this amicably, Kevin, before going to the police." "I'm sorry." Kevin, perhaps no longer feeling up to arguing under Alex's intimidating presence, apologized again, seemingly resigned. However, when he sharply reprimanded him with "You're apologizing to the wrong person," Kevin then turned to apologize to me. "I'm sorry, Daniel," he said. Although I wished he had simply apologized from the start without making excuses, I felt somewhat sorry for Kevin and chose not to say anything more. But what Kevin had done was unforgivable. "You claimed you could recruit more talented individuals than Daniel, but I disagree. Would truly talented individuals follow someone who judges others based on their educational background? Is it right for a superior to claim they're providing tough love while actually harassing others? I certainly don't think so. I would resign immediately from any company that harbors such individuals. Daniel has merely endured your harassment. You're absolutely right. As the CEO, I must take immediate action if I become aware of such harassment. Don't expect to advance in this company if you judge people by their education. Alex spoke these final words with a stern voice to Kevin. Kevin was left with no recourse but to hang his head. Soon after, Kevin was demoted to a regular employee at a regional branch. In fact, Alex was gifted. Being gifted means having innate abilities significantly higher than those of one's peers in certain areas, such as academics, arts, creativity, or language skills. Alex excelled particularly in mathematics and, like me, struggled to fit in during his early years. Despite being smart, he was ostracized by his peers and found classes uninteresting. The design company we have now was actually founded by him during his college years. He said that running the company allowed him to fully express his abilities for the first time, giving him a real sense of purpose. He invited me to his company partly because he saw his younger self in my isolation. That's why I couldn't just leave you alone. I'm truly sorry for the trouble Kevin caused you. No, it's not your fault, and please stop. It's not right for a boss to apologize to his subordinate. A few days later, when he came to check on me, we continued to work as usual, and he apologized for Kevin's behavior. I hurriedly stopped him. Kevin was my subordinate, and he caused you a lot of trouble. Besides, I will not be the CEO anymore. Could you keep in touch with me like before? Alex. Alex said this with a hint of loneliness. As we used to be close friends in Mensa, and it felt like reclaiming that. I'm counting on you to take good care of the company, Daniel. Alex smiled warmly, reminiscing. I successfully took over the presidency of the design company from Alex. Just as Alex found freedom to express his talents after starting the company, I too remember how meeting Alex made my life more enjoyable, as if it were just yesterday. The happiness of being in an environment where I didn't have to hide my talents and wasn't ostracized gave me a sense of purpose. Being gifted myself, meeting Alex made the world seem more enjoyable. Alex is now setting up a marketing company. Both of us are thriving, fully utilizing our talents. I continued to work as the CEO, occasionally involving myself in design work, and the company's performance was excellent. It was unimaginable in the past, but I now exchange business cards and network with various people at president's meetings. The employees also supported me. When Kevin was around, I was greatly indebted to everyone, so I felt even more grateful. And I am thankful not only to Alex, who brought a turning point to my introverted self, but also to Mensa. I occasionally host events for members, offering advice and networking opportunities to those who, like my younger self, face similar challenges. Having talent is great, but I strongly believe in the importance of also cultivating one's character. This guy's a total fool, an ex-gang member. At the mixer, a former classmate of mine laughed mockingly as he said that about me. Because of him, my high school days were miserable. Even now, he speaks ill of me, boasting about how much better he is. Amidst all this. Perhaps you don't know. Huh? One of the promotional models attending the event said that to my former classmate. Although he looked puzzled by her words, she ignored it and smiled at me. Everyone has noticed. Shortly after, when she revealed my true identity, my former classmate was utterly astonished. And thus, the tables were turned between my former classmate and me. I am Cameron. I'm not even close to having a significant other. I'm a single man with almost no experience in romance. Ever since I was a child, I've had a fondness for vehicles like cars and motorcycles. Cameron, what do you want this year? I want a motorcycle. You really do love vehicles, Cameron. For birthdays and Christmas, I always asked for famous vehicle toys. And I had a particular favorite one that I always carried in my backpack and played with daily. Alright, this year let's splurge a bit and get you one you can actually ride. Yay! My dad always watched over me kindly, seeing how much I enjoyed it. Not only that, but he'd take me to vehicle-related events or just out for long drives on days when there was nothing special happening. Oh honey, you're always spoiling Cameron, and it seems Cameron's love for vehicles is definitely inherited from you. My mom would sometimes watch us play together, shaking her head in amusement. However, when I was in 6th grade, my dad passed away due to illness. After that, my mom raised me all by herself. Sorry Cameron, I'm coming home late tonight, so have dinner by yourself and go to bed early. Okay, I understand. Don't push yourself too hard. Since my busy mom was hardly ever at home, I felt quite lonely, to be honest. But I didn't want to be a burden to her. So, I endured. I'm sorry I can't be there with you. I'm all right. I have the toys Dad gave me. When I play with them, time flies, and I don't feel lonely. I always answered my mom with a smile, even though she looked apologetic. And to help her in any way I could, I took the initiative to do household chores. I'm going to help out at Tyler's shop today. Just leave the dishes at the usual place. I'll take care of them all when I get back. Thank you, Cameron. In addition, I helped with newspaper delivery and assisted at my relative Tyler's shop, doing my best to support our household finances. Our relatives, aware of our situation, also lent a hand in various ways. Here's some pocket money for you, Cameron. Take it. Really? Are you sure? Yes. Use it to treat your mom to something nice. They would give me a little extra pocket money or spare household supplies, saying they had extra. George and Helen, an elderly couple living nearby, also doted on me, sharing their extra meals and snacks. Thank you always. No problem. George always looks forward to you delivering the newspaper every day. They watched over our family warmly. And thanks to my mom working from dawn till dusk every day, I was able to advance to high school without any issues. I truly can thank the people around me enough. Whenever I express my gratitude, everyone tells me that seeing me grow up healthy and happy is the best repayment. Though I couldn't afford luxuries until middle school, I lived happily every day. Hey, Cameron, there's talk of us all going to see a movie next time. Would you like to go? Sorry, I'm happy you invited me, but I have to go to work. As a high school student, I became even more consumed by part-time jobs. To earn money for living expenses, I didn't join any clubs and sacrifice my hobbies to work. Honestly, I wanted to hang out with friends and experience youth club activities. Yet, the image of my mom working hard for me always came to mind. I prioritized work to lighten her burden just a bit. But on my 16th birthday, here you go, it's ready. Jess, I've been looking forward to this all year. Every year on this day, my favorite dish made by my mom, fried chicken, and a homemade cake, would be on the dinner table. The chicken was bought from a discount supermarket, and the strawberries on the cake were small. Yet, for me, it was the ultimate feast. It was when I blew out the candles on the cake. Cameron, take this. Huh? My mom handed me a bank book. It had a considerable amount of money saved. This is all the money you've contributed to the house. I haven't spent a cent of it and saved it all. Use this money to pursue your dream. I don't need it. Use it for the household. That's why I've been working. I tried to refuse in surprise, but my mom wouldn't take it back. Just accept it. I've always felt sorry for making you feel lonely. It's fine. I was okay, as long as it made you smile. Your pursuing your dreams is my greatest happiness. I'd rather see you achieve your dreams and smile. With that, my mom insisted on giving me the bank book. Moved by her words, I ended up crying and accepting the money. After that, I got my motorcycle license to chase my dream. Being able to ride a motorcycle expanded my job options. This led me to work even harder than before. You've been busy lately. Don't overdo it. I shouldn't be hearing that from you. Besides, I enjoy the work so much I can't help it, so I'm fine. My mom looked worried as my work hours increased, but I shrugged it off with a smile. I wasn't lying. Having a new goal of fulfilling my dream gave me more motivation than ever. Plus, riding my bike, the wind blowing past me seemed to carry away all my fatigue. Hey, Cameron, you're done for the day, right? Here, some refreshments. Thank you. One day after work, I was chatting with Alex and Dylan, two of my colleagues, in front of the store. They were seniors who always looked out for me, and I respected them both. It was when I came out of the store that I saw those two, Alex and Dylan, sitting on their bikes and chatting away happily. They came up to me and gave me a drink. Alex and Dylan, both college students, dressed in flashy styles like tattoos and earrings, might look like delinquents at first glance. However, these two are impressive individuals. Despite being college students, they are entrepreneurial college students who run their own apparel brand. That's why I was so engrossed in their stories. Is that Cameron, despite being poor? I didn't realize that my classmate Kevin, who was on his way home from school, was watching me. The next morning, I entered the classroom as usual. Ah, he's here. Isn't that bad? What's that? Suddenly, for some reason, my classmates were glancing back and forth between me and the blackboard. And when I looked at the blackboard, there was a photo of me talking to those two college students. Furthermore, it was boldly written, "Scoop. Cameron is a gang member. What's this all about?" I was stunned and muttered to myself, "Cameron hangs out with bad crowds. He's a gangster." Kevin shouted that. I was momentarily taken aback by that, but I quickly retorted, "That's not true. Those people aren't gangsters. This photo is the evidence. Sure, they might look like delinquents, but this alone isn't proof that they are gangsters." No matter how much I tried to explain, Kevin wouldn't listen to me. Eventually, a teacher who heard the commotion separated us, and both of us were called in after school. There, I received a stern warning for hanging out with bad influences around 10 p.m. However, the teachers knew my circumstances, so I didn't face any disciplinary actions. Is that rumor true? I don't know, but I don't want to hang out with someone with such rumors. After that, I became the subject of rumors, and my classmates started avoiding me. From then on, I was ostracized by my classmates. Nobody wants to be involved with a gangster. Kevin, who was supposed to be called in as well, started making sarcastic remarks. In such circumstances, I spent most of my time in high school without talking to anyone and graduated. Honestly, I considered dropping out at one point, but for my mother, who worked hard to get me into high school, I wanted to at least graduate. No memories at all. On the day of the graduation ceremony, while I was relieved that I would no longer be looked at with disdain, I felt sad that I didn't make any fun memories with friends over the 3 years. Let's move on. I still have my goals of repaying my mother and achieving my dreams. Saying that, I turned my back on my classmates, who were reluctant to part ways, and started walking. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed since my high school graduation. Thanks to my hard work over these 10 years, my job was going well, and I could finally make my mother comfortable. Hey, Cameron, are you free this weekend? You must be, right? Suddenly, what's up, Ryan? Don't make me sound like I have nothing to do, but yeah, I'm free. One day, my work colleague Ryan, in a cheerful mood, approached me. I didn't make friends in high school, but now I have a friend who could be called my partner. That's Ryan. He's a bit flashy, but I trust him more than anyone because he's skilled. Let's go to a mixer next time. A mixer? No, I'm good. Don't say that. Besides, it's definitely going to be fun if you come. Initially reluctant, I was persuaded by Ryan to participate as an additional number. Ryan set it up, and all the women apparently work in the same field. The men's side included me, Ryan, and Ryan's college friend Nick. Also, someone Nick knows from work. At that time, I had no idea that person would be the last person I wanted to meet. The place will be full of beautiful women. Ryan didn't tell me much, seeing that I wasn't too enthusiastic about it. As a result, I didn't know what kind of jobs the women were doing until the mixer started. Hello. When I entered the bar, the women had already arrived and were seated. They started whispering to each other when they saw me. I was puzzled by this one. Hello, wow, they are all so beautiful. I heard an annoying voice. Turning around, I saw Kevin. Are you, by any chance, Cameron? I knew it, it's you, Kevin. Kevin also seemed to have noticed me and was smirking. Just as I was thinking about leaving, the last member arrived, and I completely lost my chance to leave. After the toast, the self-introductions began. My name is Kevin. I run an IT company. Kevin greeted confidently. So, Kevin became a CEO. Come to think of it, we haven't known anything about each other since graduating high school. Even though we used to know everything. Hi, I'm Cameron. I work with motorcycles. As I introduced myself, the women seemed excited, as if saying, I knew it. This guy used to be a gang member and was such a fool that he'd get called out by teachers. Really? Seeing the women's reaction, Kevin started speaking ill of me. This not only surprised the women, but also made Ryan and the others look skeptical. This guy is a fool who used to be in a gang. Kevin continued to mock me, laughing, seemingly oblivious to the atmosphere. Meanwhile, I didn't feel like retorting and just drank my drink in silence. Compared to him, I run a company. Kevin went from insulting me to bragging about how great he was. The women exchanged glances. And then, Kevin. Yes. Do you not know? What? One of the women addressed Kevin. I believe her name was Emily. She had a cute face and a smile like a flower. Kevin looked puzzled at Emily's words. Ignoring Kevin, she turned a beaming smile towards me. We've all noticed. Cameron is the famous motorcycle racer that's all the rage right now, right? Indeed, I am a motorcycle racer known internationally. And the women were promotional models. Sometimes they travel abroad, so it seemed they knew about me. I noticed Cameron as soon as he entered the bar and told everyone. That's why the women knew about my true identity and had been restless from the start. Hearing this, Ryan lightly patted my shoulder. That's what I told you, right? You're gonna be a big hit when you get here. Hearing that made me chuckle involuntarily. Honestly, I thought motorcycle racing was something only a few people were interested in. Indeed, Kevin probably didn't know about me because it's not that big of a deal in the States. Yet, these women knew about me. I felt embarrassed by that fact. I want to hear more about Cameron's story. Me too. I'm interested as well, actually. I've been watching road races in France and wanted to hear more about it. From that point on, the mixer turned into my solo show. Not just the women, but the men were also captivated by the world of motorcycle racing, something they don't usually hear about. Such bike talk, girls probably aren't interested in that, right? Instead, my company is. That's not true at all. Motorcycles have a different kind of appeal from cars. Kevin tried to interrupt and steer the conversation back to himself. However, no one was listening, and all the interest was focused on me. In the end, Kevin was left out of the mixer, silently drinking alone. I observed him while entertaining the others with my stories. His demeanor, having given up on joining in our conversation, reminded me of myself back in high school. Kevin. Later, as I was getting up to go to the restroom, I bumped into Kevin, who was packing his things. I later learned that he was feeling out of place and was about to leave at that moment. "It's all your fault. You made me look like a fool." Kevin was angry the moment he saw me. Come to think of it, Kevin always lashed out at me whenever something unreasonable happened. I would dodge it casually, and we would find various things to do for stress relief. I fondly remembered how we used to play with the same toys when we were kids. You hadn't changed in that aspect. Huh? Getting mad at me whenever something happens. Hey, Kevin, why did you say such things back in high school? Kevin's expression twisted at my words. And then, why do you always get to do what you love? He murmured that. Upon further conversation, it turned out he was jealous of me. We used to be the same in everything when we were kids. Actually, Kevin and I were childhood friends who had been together from kindergarten through high school. Cameron, look, I got one too. Wow, that's awesome. Let's play together. Okay. Kevin loved vehicles, especially motorcycles, and we used to play with toy bikes together. Remembering that, I decided to talk to Kevin. I actually wanted to become a racer too. Kevin said with a self-deprecating laugh. Indeed, he always used to say, "I'm going to be a racer, so you should too, Cameron. We'll become famous racers together." However, his parents told him, "Playing with motorcycle toys won't get you anywhere in life. You can't become one of those rare people. Stop dreaming and study hard to become an IT company CEO," and he was forced to give up his dream. Since then, I've just been walking the path laid out by my parents. And he started focusing on studying as his parents had told him. Gradually, Kevin became busy with lessons, and I started hustling to earn living expenses, and we naturally stopped playing together. I was always jealous of you for chasing your dreams, despite being poor. His words made me reminisce about the past. The time in high school, from when I got my motorcycle license until I was ostracized by my classmates. Did you really get your license? Yeah, I did. This brings me one step closer to my dream. That's amazing. Your dream was to become a motorcycle racer, right? Exactly. My dream is to become a motorcycle racer who competes internationally. I was talking with my classmates about getting my license and my future dreams. What kind of expression did Kevin have at that time? What kind of look was in his eyes as he listened to my story? Sorry, I didn't notice anything. Even though I was aware of your parents being overly controlling, I could have at least listened to you, but I did nothing. It can't be helped. You had your own difficulties. Besides, I'm the one at fault. Hearing what was in Kevin's heart, I decided to forgive his past actions. And so, we made peace with each other. I have a race coming up soon. Really? If you're interested, why don't you come watch the MotoGP, the premier class of road racing? When I invited him, he looked surprised but then nodded. After that, Kevin and I returned to our seats together. Instead of the tense atmosphere from before, we returned in a calm mood, and I could tell that Ryan and the others were relieved. Did you guys make up? Well, yes, but I'm interested in hearing about your experience too. Being a CEO must be tough, right? Yeah, it is. Managing a company is harder than I thought. Let me hear your story later, Cameron. I nodded with a smile at Kevin's words. 6 months later, I was competing in the MotoGP. In the audience were my mother and Kevin, who had come from the States to support me. I had received calls from both of them before the race. Good luck, we're cheering for you. I want to see your brave figure. Today, I definitely can't lose. Of course, Ryan, who is a race engineer, was also there supporting me at the forefront. I can't look pathetic in front of her. Well, yeah. When I looked towards the audience, I saw Emily there. In fact, after the mixer, I had exchanged contact information with her. I want to hear more about your story, Cameron. Me too, I want to talk more with you, Emily. During the mixer, she was the one who listened to my stories with a smile. And since she was the first to recognize me, I found myself drawn to her by the time the mixer ended. At that point, I only had 1 month left in the States. Still, we managed to go on dates, like dinners and movies, once a week. And on the day of my departure, Emily, I love you, it's going to be long distance, but would you date with me? I confessed my love to her when she came to see me official. I love you too, Cameron, so please let me be by your side. The confession was a success. I started dating Emily. And today, at the MotoGP, I'm definitely going to win. I want to show you my best. I'm looking forward to it, but don't get hurt, okay? Yeah, I understand. With that promise to Emily, whom I hadn't seen in a while, I took on the race. All the rivals were formidable. I gripped the motorcycle's handlebars tightly, took a deep breath, and focused. Amid the tense situation, what flashed through my mind was the sound of everyone's cheering. I used their voices as strength, keeping my concentration as I maneuvered the bike. And then, yes, I did it. I achieved the long-awaited victory. Looking towards the audience, I saw Emily, tears streaming down her face as she clapped. I directed my best smile towards her. Then, I stood at the top of the podium. I made a big victory pose towards my Father in heaven. I kept my promise, Dad. I felt as if my Father in heaven was praising me, saying, "Well done." After that, things were hectic for a while. With the victory, I was approached from all sides, and after returning home, there were non-stop requests for interviews on TV. Cameron is tired, so please wait until things settle down for interviews. If Ryan and Kevin hadn't helped me, I might have fainted from the unfamiliar treatment. Come to think of it, Emily laughed at me. I'm really happy that Cameron is recognized by everyone. Her smile, as she said that, was as beautiful as ever, like a flower. And then, 2 weeks after the victory, I visited my father's grave with my mother. Cameron, what do you want to do in the future? My father, on his sickbed, had asked me that. Holding my father's hand, which had become thin from illness, I promised, I want to be the world's #1 motorcycle racer. I'll definitely show you that, Dad. My father smiled at my answer. That's right. Dreams come true if you don't give up. I'll always be supporting you. I'll watch you become the world's #1 from the sky. He said that and encouraged me. Because of that promise, I never gave up, no matter what happened. And finally, I was able to fulfill that promise. I wonder if you were watching, Dad, you'd probably say it was expected of me. I laughed as I placed something in front of my father's grave. It was the first motorcycle toy my father bought for me. That toy was the reason I had a dream. I made my dream come true. I reported to my father. Cameron, you did great. You're truly our child. My mother, watching me, was moved to tears of joy. Smiling, I said, I'm glad to be your child. After talking to my father about various things for a while, we left the grave, promising to bring my wife next time. Sorry for taking your time. It's okay. I wanted to have a good talk with you. After that, I took the time to talk with Kevin, just the two of us. First, Kevin sincerely apologized for his past actions. You know, I'm attending a school now. Kevin seemed to have been inspired by my effort and success in pursuing my dream. He decided to take on a challenge himself. While managing his company, he started attending a racing school to fulfill his long-held dream of becoming a motorcycle racer. Didn't your parents object? They did. They told me not to be delusional and to manage the business seriously. It seems that was the first time Kevin directly stood up to his parents. After many discussions, he somehow managed to get their permission. I want to chase my dreams too, and I want to help you. Utilizing his IT skills, he began to support me. Thanks to Kevin, I was able to analyze the bike's performance, my physique, and information about my rivals in much more detail. With this additional boost, I set off once again towards my dream of consecutive victories in the MotoGP. Cameron, check this out. All right. As best friends chasing the same dream, we started spending more time together again. Count me in too. What was different from before was that Ryan was also with us. Now, the three of us are united in pursuing our dreams. A year later, I competed in the MotoGP. Previously, the competition was tight, and I couldn't let my guard down, but this time was different. With the support of Kevin and Ryan, I won by a large margin. I managed to secure back-to-back championships. Congratulations, Cameron. Way to go, Cameron. As my teammates and mother celebrated the victory, I rushed to Emily. Pulling something out of my pocket. Emily. I knelt before Emily and presented her with a ring box. Emily, I've been wanting to say this if I won a championship again. Will you marry me? I made a marriage proposal to her. Emily teared up at the suddenness of it all. Even in her teary state, I found her beautiful. Yes, I'd be happy to. Amid the tense anticipation of those around us, Emily's response was affirmative. I couldn't help but embrace Emily tightly. Congratulations, Cameron. Congrats to both of you. Everyone celebrated both my victory and the successful proposal. Make her happy and make sure you're happy too. Kevin, now a close friend, was genuinely happy for me. He had recently competed in a race. While he didn't win right off the bat, he had a satisfied look on his face. 2 years later, Emily and I were blessed with a lovely baby boy. When your father passed away, I was only worried about whether I could raise you on my own, but to see you grow up so admirably, fulfill your dreams, and even give me a grandchild, I couldn't be more thankful. You're the best son. My mother, holding her grandson, said this with tears in her eyes. Hearing her words, various memories flashed through my mind. The days I worked hard for my mother, the support she gave me more than anyone else, and how she encouraged me. I'm the one who should be thankful, Mom. You raised me by yourself and supported me, allowing me to chase my dreams. Thank you so much, Mom. I expressed my heartfelt gratitude to my mother. Then, on my son's first Christmas, I quietly placed a toy motorcycle beside my sleeping son's pillow. No matter what dreams you choose to pursue, I'll support you. Just like my parents did for me. From my experiences, I'm convinced that dreams do come true if you don't give up. The dream I promised my father, to become the world's #1 motorcycle racer, came true through continuous wishing and effort. Even in the most difficult situations, I learned the importance of never giving up on my dreams. Looking back, maybe it was because of my experiences in high school that I was able to work this hard. During high school, even though I was looked down upon by my classmates, thinking about motorcycles helped me endure the tough times. And those experiences might have been what made me the world's #1 motorcycle racer. I still feel bad about the past. That's why I want to challenge you head-on as a rival this time. Kevin decided to take a step forward and fulfilled his dream of becoming a motorcycle racer. By the way, I met Alex and Dylan just before graduating from high school. Really? They properly told me about you and themselves. It seems they noticed I was looking gloomy while working part-time, and after some digging, they found out about Kevin. They talked a lot and shared their knowledge as entrepreneurs. That's why the IT company is doing well, and they still cooperate, allowing Kevin to balance being both an entrepreneur and a racer. I'm going to meet Alex and Dylan soon. Want to come, Cameron? Of course. I owe a lot to Alex and Dylan too. However, I haven't seen them since graduating high school. I'm looking forward to meeting them again. All right, we need to win the next race and give a good report. Yeah. By making promises with a friend and joining forces, I was able to fulfill the dream of consecutive victories. I believed that anyone can achieve their dreams with strong determination. And I vowed to continue chasing my dreams together with everyone who supports me. You, a poorly educated person, are not worthy of my son. Cut ties and leave the venue immediately. That's right, Michael is an elite. Someone like you has no business being involved with him. I can't believe you didn't even go to high school. I wonder why Michael invited someone like you to his big day. Oh, but since you're here, leave your gift at least. Not that it'll be much. Well then, I'll leave the gift here. Oh, and if we're cutting ties, I'll also cancel the account with a $150 million deposit at your bank. My name is Jason. This is what happened at my best friend Michael's wedding. Ever since I was young, I hated studying and always avoided it. My parents worried about me and tried various methods to spark my interest in learning, like educational drills with anime characters, riddle-like materials, and popular fun classes, but I rejected them all. Being full-time employees, my parents didn't have much time to oversee my studies and were at a loss. Though I was terrible at studying, I diligently did chores at home to help my often absent parents. Since elementary school, doing laundry and cleaning were not only my duties, but also my joy. It was fun to see the room getting cleaner, and being praised by my parents made me feel useful and happy. In middle school, I started cooking as well. Since my days in elementary school, I've been intrigued by cooking, starting with basics like pancakes and soup. Due to my parents' diligence, we had sufficient resources, allowing me to dive into my culinary interests by acquiring cookbooks and sourcing the necessary ingredients to experiment with various recipes. This sparked my enthusiasm for household tasks, making them more enjoyable. In particular, meat and potato stew became my signature dish. Initially, I used store-bought mixes, but my quest for improvement led me to experiment with various seasonings and prioritize ingredient quality. My commitment even resulted in receiving a pressure cooker as a birthday gift, enhancing my cooking tools. As exam season approached, despite my reluctance towards studying, I recognized the necessity to study to prevent failing. Therefore, my parents suggested, during exams, we can take care of the meals, maybe pick up some ready-made dishes or fast food. But my love for cooking far outweighed my interest in studying, so I said, leave the cooking to me, and even prepared make-ahead meals to freeze over the weekends. Seeing my dedication, my parents must have realized that academics weren't my strong suit and decided to let me focus on household chores as much as I wanted. Although I detested and struggled with studying, I didn't particularly dislike school itself. Spending time with my best friend, Michael, made my days quite fulfilling. Michael was the eldest son of a family that had a tradition of serving as bank presidents, truly dedicated to his studies. He was the complete opposite of me. Michael was always told by his parents, "You must go to a prestigious university and carry on the family legacy. Therefore, prioritize your studies and choose extracurriculars that don't interfere too much." Despite the expectations placed upon him, Michael consistently excelled in his studies, always achieving the top rank in periodic exams. Even though we were complete opposites, Michael was incredibly kind-hearted. To ensure I had time for cooking at home, he would assist me with my homework during school hours, patiently explaining the solutions to problems I struggled with. Taking this as an opportunity, we started spending more time together, and during one of our lunch breaks, I noticed that Michael was eating fast food every day. When I asked about it, I found out that Michael's family, all working as bankers, were too busy to prepare meals, so he was given a $5 to buy his lunch. However, Michael, not a big eater, found the salty flavors not to his liking and was struggling with it. So, I suggested, "How about I make lunch for you?" Michael hesitated, saying, "Really? But it seems like a lot of trouble." But when I insisted, "Don't worry about it. I already make lunch for my parents as well, so adding one more isn't much of a hassle. It's my way of thanking you for all the help with studying, you know." He agreed. Also, it was decided that the $5 he received for his lunch would be given to me as compensation for the ingredients. Although I initially refused, Michael insisted, and I reluctantly accepted. I enjoyed making lunch every day and watching Michael's reactions as he ate. As I got to know his taste preferences, the lightly seasoned meat and potatoes I prepared were particularly to his liking, receiving high praise. Since dinners at his home were mostly pre-made from the supermarket due to his family's late returns, I occasionally brought over some home-cooked meals to share. I only met Michael's mother once when she happened to come home early. She bombarded me with questions, asking, "Oh, are you Michael's friend? Welcome, since you're his friend. You must be good at studying, right? Which high school are you aiming for?" When I honestly told her that I wasn't good at studying and hadn't thought about high school at all, she seemed displeased and muttered, "Why would he be friends with someone like him?" Seeing her like that, I thought to myself, what a scary lady. Just when Michael chimed in, "I've told you about him before. He's the one who makes lunch for me and sometimes brings dinner. Remember, Jason." Michael's mother then gave me a thorough once-over and said with a smile, "Well, thank you for that. It's indeed important to stay healthy, and I appreciate it. They say teaching also contributes to Michael's growth, so please continue to do so." But her eyes didn't smile, which was frightening. It seemed she knew about the daily lunches I prepared, and she seemed to appreciate that, but the intensity in her demeanor, as if saying, "Don't associate with someone who can't study," and the way she scrutinized me like she was scoring me, made me uncomfortable. I continued to make Michael's lunches until we graduated. And then, on graduation day, as Michael and I were saying our goodbyes, his mother approached us. "Hello, you're Jason, right? Thank you for the lunches all this time. By the way, have you decided on a high school yet?" she asked, somewhat condescendingly. I replied, "It was a tough decision, but I've decided not to pursue high school and to start working, even though I'm still inexperienced." Her face instantly turned stern, almost as if she was about to scold me. Feeling intimidated, Michael said, "Jason's future has nothing to do with you, Mom. Hey Jason, they're taking a class photo over there. Let's go." And he pulled me away. Michael went on to attend the top local high school as planned, and initially, under pressure from my parents and teacher, I intended to continue my studies. However, having never taken my studies seriously, I failed even my safety schools and, in a panic, applied to a private high school with a low entry requirement, which I got into. But in my haste, I hadn't researched this school well, and it turned out to be expensive compared to others, with high tuition fees and numerous donations. I didn't want to pay so much just to continue studying, something I hated, so I convinced my parents otherwise. Although they could afford it and suggested it would be better for my future, I had made up my mind not to go. Seeing my determination, my parents gave up. And so, I entered the workforce right after middle school. For 15 years since then, I worked tirelessly. Unlike studying, I found joy in working hard and being useful to someone. It made me happy when customers thanked me, and it was a joy to be praised by my boss saying, "Well done." Even though there was overtime, it didn't feel tough at all. I was truly a workaholic. Even on my days off, If I heard there was a shift available, I would volunteer to work. I love my job that much. One day, I received a wedding invitation from Michael. I was as happy as if it were my own celebration and immediately replied that I would attend. And then, on the wedding day, the venue was incredibly luxurious. There were massive bouquets, especially white roses, adorning each table. The wall decorations were intricate, evoking the grandeur of a medieval European ball. After entering high school, Michael progressed smoothly to a prestigious university and was reputed to be outstanding in college. I had heard rumors of his success even while working. Michael, with his inherent intelligence, made remarkable achievements as a banker and was recognized for his skills, taking over his father's position as the head of a local bank much earlier than planned, with his father becoming the chairman. This luxurious venue must be a testament to Michael's hard work. Speaking of the wedding, I guess Michael's parents will be attending too. I remember back in middle school, when Michael's parents would insist he study constantly, even when he was sick and should have been resting, and I had the impression his mother didn't think highly of me. This is making me a bit uneasy. While I was thinking about this, right as I entered the venue, people who seemed to be Michael's parents noticed me and approached. "Are you Jason, Michael's friend from middle school?" Michael's father asked, somewhat intimidatingly. I hesitated before answering, "Yes." Then they immediately followed up with, "We were surprised to hear you weren't going to high school at the graduation ceremony, but what happened after that?" I responded, "As I've mentioned before, I've been working since graduating from middle school." Then, in unison, the two of them let out a big sigh, saying, "Ha ha ha. You, a poorly educated person, are not worthy of my son. Cut ties and leave the venue immediately." That's right. Michael is an elite among elites. A person like you, who's basically a failure as a person, shouldn't be associating with him. Really, to think you didn't go to high school. I wonder why Michael invited someone like you to such an important occasion. But since you are here, leave your wedding gift. It's not like it's going to be a significant amount anyway. I was at a loss for words at their outrageous remarks. But they were Michael's parents, after all. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but feeling a mix of discomfort, I retorted, "Well, if you insist on cutting ties, I suppose that's the only option. Oh, this is your wedding gift. Please accept it. If we're cutting ties, I'll also be canceling the $150 million deposit I have with your bank." But they just laughed, clutching their stomachs, and said, "What? $150 million? What kind of joke is that? You're funny. It's hilarious that you're missing so many screws in your head." That's when Michael arrived. I told him about the treatment I received from his parents and said I was going to leave since I had already paid my respects and didn't want to cause any trouble. "Michael, you really need to choose your friends more carefully. This guy, not only is he a shameful failure, but he's also claiming to cancel a $150 million deposit. A loser and a big liar. It's just too funny. It's so pathetic it's almost pitiable." Hearing this, Michael's face turned pale instantly. Ignoring his parents, he immediately said to me, "Jason, I'm so sorry for making you go through this just for coming to celebrate. I know it's hard to reconsider the deposit thing. My mom and dad will be leaving. Please, I want you to stay at the ceremony. I promise you won't regret it." Seeing how earnest Michael was, I decided to stay for the time being. Of course, I couldn't possibly ask Michael's parents not to attend their own son's wedding, so I said there was no need to send them away. I spent the ceremony trying not to look towards Michael's family seats as much as possible. Initially, I thought I wouldn't be in the mood for celebration because of his parents, but as the ceremony began, I found myself getting emotional at the sight of my friend who had grown into such a fine person. The bride's thoughtful gestures and the way she carried herself made it clear she was a wonderful woman. I sincerely hoped they would be happy. At the end of the ceremony, when Michael began to read a letter to his family, everyone expected an emotional story. "Thank you all for gathering here today. I have something modest to share with my parents. Everyone expected an emotional story to unfold. However, Michael began, "Firstly, I deeply apologize for any discomfort or inconvenience caused by my parents' belief in the supremacy of education and banking careers, which has upset various individuals over the years. Earlier, they insulted my dear friend Jason, calling him an uneducated lowlife and a liar. Jason, I am truly sorry for the extremely rude behavior of my parents. Additionally, as a banker, I apologize for the disrespectful treatment our bank has shown towards Jason, a valued client who has entrusted us with a significant amount of assets. I am fully aware of the audacity of this, but I sincerely hope to continue our business relationship moving forward." Michael's announcement at such a joyous occasion took everyone by surprise. The entire venue was abuzz with murmurs. Unwavering in his resolve, Michael continued, "Furthermore, my parents have committed numerous acts of misconduct over the years. Here is the evidence." The projector, which had just been showing the happy beginnings of the bride and groom, now displayed evidence of their wrongdoing. They had accepted bribes from valued customers, approved large loans without proper checks, and increased interest rates, among other serious ethical breaches as bankers. The venue, already buzzing, now erupted into a louder commotion, especially from the seats occupied by business associates. Michael's parents turned pale. He looked at his parents once before declaring, "Effective today, my parents will be removed from all their positions at the bank. Furthermore, to prevent such incidents in the future, we will conduct a thorough internal investigation and commit to restructuring the bank to ensure its integrity. I kindly ask for your continued business and support," and he apologized once again. Michael's parents, pale and shaken, collapsed to their knees, unable to face reality, their heads bowed. Despite not having done anything wrong, I was moved by Michael's defiance of his own parents and applauded him. My applause led others in attendance to join in, and with that, Michael's wedding came to a close. In fact, after graduating from middle school, I immediately sought to turn my passion for housework into a career and joined a housekeeping service company, where I worked for about 10 years. My years of honing my housekeeping skills were apparently on par with those of industry veterans, and my colleagues respected and accepted me as a professional, despite my junior high school education. Working in a housekeeping service wasn't just about doing chores. It often involved significant communication with clients. Especially during the summer, when parents were at work and their children were home, I was often asked to take care of the kids and prepare their meals. After playing with the children and completing the household tasks, I would report back to the children's mother about the day's activities and how the children were doing. It was a bit embarrassing but very rewarding to be thanked for taking care of the children, on top of the housekeeping, by the clients. I loved the routine of working, communicating with clients, and being appreciated for my efforts. On days off from work, I enjoyed doing housework at my parents' home, making my hobby essentially my job. I had no girlfriend, so I saved up quite a bit of money, and after 10 years, I left the company to start my own housekeeping service. My boss, Alex, who had been very helpful, joked with me, saying, "Well, losing a talented person like you is a real blow. And to hear you're starting your own company. Looks like we'll have more competition," but he sent me off warmly. Starting my company was a challenge, especially since I knew nothing about management or accounting, but I was determined to learn everything necessary for my business, including bookkeeping, marketing, and law, often seeking help from my hired secretary. I was amazed at how my social experiences enabled me to grasp studies I couldn't during my childhood. I had a solid understanding of the housekeeping service industry from my previous job, so I created manuals to ensure even beginners could quickly start working. I also pondered over the training content, considering it might be beneficial to have a training facility. I loved listening to people, so even as a CEO, I made it a point to hear out every employee. In the beginning, when the company was just a small team of about 10 people, it felt like a family. This approach resulted in an extremely low turnover rate at my company, leading to a successful start in the industry. Although I no longer visited clients' homes as the CEO, I cooked in the employee cafeteria, which served as a relaxing hobby for me. Initially, the employees were hesitant, but they soon came to love my cooking, proclaiming it the best and frequently using the cafeteria. Eventually, our service expanded beyond typical households to cater to affluent clients, and it seems that word of mouth spread our reputation. Suddenly, we saw a surge in wealthy customers. Moreover, we were introduced by ultra-wealthy clients to not only provide household services but also secure major contracts with nursing homes and care centers. This was the catalyst for my company's rapid growth. While not all funds were surplus, we managed to deposit $150 million in the company's name at Michael's Bank. In fact, when starting the company, my savings were insufficient, so I had sought a loan from Michael's Bank. I had asked Michael for a favor, citing our old acquaintance, but he conducted a thorough investigation. Eventually, we were deemed eligible for the loan, and I realized that it was Michael's sincerity and seriousness that allowed him to become a bank president at such a young age. Since the establishment, we've maintained a relationship, and now we are considered highly valued customers. Though I was irritated by Michael's parents, Michael himself was not at fault, and his desperate efforts to revive the bank were compelling enough to make me want to support him, leaving the $150 million deposit untouched. When we meet at the bank, we are the president and the bank president. Elsewhere, we are close friends, making sure not to mix personal and professional matters. After that wedding, Michael's parents were indeed stripped of all their bank positions instantly. It's too cruel to abandon your own parents. It's all because of that loser. Okay, just let us work as bank employees at least. They seemed to plead with Michael, but he rejected them outright, and they were completely ousted from the bank. This story spread not only within the bank but also among the neighbors, leading to days filled with whispered rumors. They became uncomfortable and moved to a different region. They are still fixated on being bank employees and have gone for interviews at banks in other regions, but the banking community is already well aware of the incidents caused by Michael's parents. It's unlikely that any bank would hire them. Michael mentioned that this was an opportunity to completely sever ties with his parents, leaving them without anyone to rely on. I wonder how they will manage in the future. Well, it's none of my business, I suppose. Meanwhile, Michael and his wife, Sophia, are supporting each other and dedicating themselves to their work at the bank. Sophia, who used to work at the bank's reception, captivated Michael with her grace, leading him to pursue her relentlessly. Initially, she avoided him due to fear of being involved with the bank president's son, but after a year of persistent effort, they started dating. Now, she seems to be managing Michael's schedule as his secretary. Being very beautiful, she often faces advances from business associates, so Michael keeps a watchful eye. He hopes that wearing wedding rings now that they are married will mitigate the situation, but it remains to be seen. The issues of fraudulent loans and interest rates at Michael's bank were covered in news and magazines, and the word bankruptcy loomed in my mind. However, it seems that many major clients were invited to that wedding, and most of them, including myself, after seeing Michael in action, wanted to support him. This led to the accounts not being closed, and instead, they offered encouragement and support. Although it was a struggle to get back on track, Michael's innate intelligence and ability to think ahead have led him to devise new strategies one after another. By cleaning up the bank, it seems that customer trust is actually on the rise, seeing the bank as more reliable now. I'm sure that with Michael at the helm, it won't take too long for the bank to recover. Several months have passed, and things have settled down quite a bit, so I've started visiting Michael's new home from time to time. Michael and his wife, Sophia, seem to struggle with household chores, so I often drop by saying, "Housekeeping service to the rescue," and help them out. It turns out they're regular users of the housekeeping service my company offers. I'm thankful they're such valued customers. Whenever I visit, I make sure to cook them one of my specialty dishes. At times like these, I usually go for beef stew. I'd skillfully chop potatoes and carrots into rough pieces, slice the onions, and cut the meat into bite-sized pieces. Just like that, I'd quietly proceed with the cooking. Michael seemed quite surprised watching me cook, perhaps because it was the first time he'd seen me in action. Sophia was also watching and said, "You're really efficient." Feeling a bit shy from the praise, but also a bit nervous because they were both watching me so intently, I somehow managed to finish making the beef stew. When I served the stew to them, Sophia was surprised by my cooking and said, "I've never had something this delicious before." Michael also complimented, "As always, delicious. This gentle flavor really hits the spot." Feeling happy that they enjoyed it, we had a great time during the meal. I suggested to Sophia, "Beef stew is quite versatile. You can turn the leftovers into curry or even croquettes. I made a bit too much, so feel free to try some variations tomorrow." Then Sophia said, "The original stew is so delicious. I'll try making it into curry since you've suggested." The other day, Sophia's sister, Mary, came over, so I cooked for her too. Mary watched me cook intently and then offered, "Let me help," and started cutting vegetables. It seems Mary, unlike her sister Sophia, has recently taken a keen interest in cooking and is really enjoying it. Mary and I stood side by side in the kitchen, savoring the meal we had just prepared. "It's incredibly delicious," she exclaimed, moved by the taste and begging me to teach her how to cook. "It's all thanks to your help," I responded. "I only chopped vegetables. I've only recently started cooking, so I can do basic things like cutting, boiling, and frying, but I just can't seem to get the seasoning right," she confessed. After much persuasion, she ended up coming over to my place to learn cooking. Despite being teased by my employees for my domestic skills, suggesting I'd make a good housewife, I had to remind myself that I am, after all, a man. "May I come over to your house?" Mary asked with puppy dog eyes, making me catch my breath, but I reminded myself it was just for cooking lessons. Catching a glimpse of Mary, I was taken aback by her soft, curled long hair and her glossy pink lips. I caught my breath again, but then scolded myself. What am I thinking? Get a grip. I quickly invited her over to my place and introduced her to the ingredients, seasonings, and cooking tools. Mary was diligently taking notes, and she looked incredibly charming. As I taught her how to cook, she improved rapidly, and a few months later, I would even get unexpected visits from Mary at my house, asking, "I made this at home. Would you like to eat it with me?" We spent our time like friends, or perhaps it was just my one-sided crush, but I eventually gathered the courage to ask her out on a date, and she accepted. It was a bitterly cold winter day. On our way back from the date, with Christmas approaching, the town was lit up with festive lights, and there seemed to be more couples around than usual. Standing in front of a large Christmas tree at the station, I took the plunge and confessed, "Mary, I've really enjoyed the days we've spent cooking together. I want to keep cooking with you, and occasionally, like today, go out on dates. Would you be my girlfriend?" It was a bit embarrassing to confess in front of the holiday lights and passers-by, but Mary blushed slightly and agreed. Since then, we've even had new recipe development dates at home. When a recipe turned out well, we shared it with the employees of the home service company, and it was a big hit with the clients. Our company has grown significantly, now with a considerable number of employees. Recently, we've even received feature requests from TV programs and magazines like Inside the Buzz, a closer look at home concierge services. But the most surprising development came when someone suggested publishing our recipes in a book. An employee had impressed a client with one of our recipes, who turned out to work for a publishing company and proposed turning our recipes into a book. Since the development of these recipes was not only my effort but also greatly due to Mary, I immediately consulted her. Excited, she agreed, saying, "It's amazing that our recipes could become a book. Please, let's do it." So, we decided to take on the project, And now we're not only working on developing recipes, but also on writing the book. Meanwhile, I've also been secretly looking for the engagement ring. I fantasize that by the time the recipe book is complete, we might share the same last name. In today's world, where even high school graduates face scrutiny, only having a middle school education is quite rare. Indeed, having a higher level of education might make success more attainable. However, I believe that educational background and success in society aren't directly proportional. In fact, without focusing on academic qualifications, I entered the workforce and have now established and managed my own company. Some might consider this hindsight, but among successful individuals, there are certainly those who started with just a middle school education. Just like Michael's parents, who despite their excellent academic backgrounds, fell into a trap by being arrogant about it. I understand that to some extent, it's inevitable to be concerned about educational background. Yet, I wish everyone would not dwell on academic qualifications so much and instead pursue what they are passionate about, leveraging their strengths in society freely. We are fully booked today. The only available room is a suite, and even at a discounted rate, it may not be suitable for you. The manager sized us up from head to toe with a disdainful smile, clearly judging us. It was obvious that he was looking down on us. Just then, an elderly man appeared from behind us. "My name is Jason." Glancing up, I saw my wife, Elizabeth, looking anxious. I wanted to say something comforting, but words failed me at that moment. After much thought, I ended up saying something quite cliché. "Elizabeth, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. It's not like I'm the one who's sick," she replied. Beside the hospital bed, Elizabeth looked exhausted, as if she was putting on a brave face like a child. Feeling sorry for her, I turned my attention to Charles, who was lying in the bed. We had received news that Charles, my father-in-law, had collapsed just a few hours earlier. It seemed his long-suffered illness had worsened. Neither Elizabeth nor I were aware of my Charles's illness, so the news came as a shock. According to the doctor, no treatment could fully cure him now. He had been informed of his condition and had come to terms with it. So, all we could do was to stand by his side as he underwent treatment in the hospital bed. If only we had a child to cheer him up, I muttered, and Elizabeth silently agreed. We didn't have any children. I was already 40, and Elizabeth was 35, making it feel too late to consider having children now. Even if we were to have a child, it's certain that we wouldn't be able to introduce them to Charles. His condition had deteriorated to that extent. Despite this, seeing my wife in pain made me inevitably wish we had a child. A few months after rushing to Charles's hospital room, he passed away. I managed to accept it because there was nothing we could do against illness, but I wondered about Elizabeth. He was her beloved father, and it wouldn't be easy for her to simply move on. That was my main concern. I took on the responsibility of handling all the arrangements after his death, including paperwork, the wake, the funeral, and notifying financial institutions. However, I left it to his company colleagues to inform others about his death, as he was a well-known consultant in his industry. He was renowned as a consultant in the hospitality industry, though I wasn't fully aware of the extent of his relationships. I wondered if we also needed to inform the media, as he had been featured on TV and in magazines. In the end, I decided to ask for help with these notifications. The most important thing for me was to stay as close to Elizabeth as possible during this time. I wasn't sure if she found my presence comforting, but I remained by her side without saying much. Eventually, the funeral arrangements were completed, and many people began to arrive at the funeral home. The first to show up were my relatives and Elizabeth's relatives, followed by people who lived near Charles. I greeted them and listened to their memories of Charles. Then, A couple who ran a diner nearby appeared. Charles was really helpful to us. He was such a good person. The wife reminisced warmly. It turned out that Charles had given them advice on their diner's service and interior design. A professional, giving advice for free. Isn't this too good to be true? It seemed the diner's couple had thought the same at first. But I think that's one of his good qualities. Because Charles was so passionate about giving advice, they reluctantly made changes to their service and interior as he suggested. To their surprise, the diner immediately started to flourish. This was astounding. As the funeral continued, more attendees arrived. Initially, it was mostly people we knew personally, but gradually, celebrities who had appeared in various media started to show up. Owners of popular diners, managers of famous hotels, and media personnel from different industries paid their respects. What struck me most was how everyone at the funeral spoke highly of Charles. Their businesses thrived immediately after receiving his guidance. Their profits doubled. They were saved by Charles. All attendees, one after another, shared such stories in front of his spirit, paying their respects. It seems he enjoyed helping others more than I thought. Watching the attendees, I gained a renewed respect for Charles. Everyone genuinely praised him, and not a single person had anything bad to say. I was reminded once again what a truly warm person he was. Elizabeth felt the same. She was somber at first, but she gradually began to smile softly. She reminisced about Charles, sharing memories of him. And she began to discover sides of him she never knew. Despite being a funeral, it was a heartwarming moment. By the end of the funeral, it seemed Elizabeth had fully regained her spirits. So, I asked her again, "Are you okay now?" "Yes, I've come to realize just how amazing Dad was. Plus, so many people gave me their contact information," she replied. "That's great. Dad is my pride. I wish I had known about all this sooner." In the end, hundreds of people attended the funeral. Given his media presence, I had expected a large turnout, but the actual number exceeded my expectations. While it was overwhelming, I also felt proud to have such an incredible man as a father-in-law. Though there were unexpected moments, the funeral went smoothly. I was relieved that everything was over without any issues. The biggest gain was that my wife, who had been downcast, now took pride in her father and looked forward. Moreover, she seemed to have made many friends and acquaintances for Charles's funeral. She mentioned people he had helped, giving her their contact information, and now that the funeral was over, she was actually meeting and talking with them. In fact, when I came home from work, she would say things like, "Today, I met the owner of the Chinese restaurant Dad used to take me to," sharing her day's events with a smile. On another day, she happily told me, "I had a phone call with one of Dad's friends, sharing the content of their conversation." Seeing her talk so brightly and happily made me glad too. I had been worried that she might become depressed and withdrawn. But those fears were unfounded, and I was truly relieved. As the first summer after Charles's death went by, and autumn deepened, Elizabeth mentioned something while we were watching TV one weekend. "I've been to this hotel before," she said. The TV was featuring a celebrity introducing a hotel. They were praising its open-air baths and stunning views with typical phrases, and the visuals seemed to match their descriptions. However, one thing caught my attention. "That looks like a very upscale hotel. How come you went there?" "I went there with my dad because of his work," she explained. Once she started talking about her father, she couldn't stop. She started recounting various memories, such as what she liked about the hotel and how, despite being together, Charles was preoccupied with work discussions and hardly paid any attention to her. For a while, I just nodded along, engaging in her stories. When there was a pause in her storytelling, I seized the moment to surprise her with a question. "Hey, Our anniversary is coming up. How about we go to that hotel? Really? I'd love to, she exclaimed. Jer, it's a place full of memories for you, right? It's perfect. Hearing this, she was ecstatic, jumping around like a child, thrilled by my suggestion. Seeing her so happy made me glad I had brought up the courage to suggest we stay at such a luxury hotel. It brought joy to me as well. Meanwhile, she started looking up the hotel on her phone right away. It seemed some aspects, like the interior, had changed, but there were also parts that remained the same. We might even meet someone who remembers Dad, she speculated. I'll leave the booking to you then. That way you can talk to the hotel staff and maybe learn more, I suggested. All right. She agreed, clapping her hands in excitement and diving back into her research. Since the trip was also for our anniversary, I wanted us to take it easy. However, given the season, there would likely be many tourists coming for the fall foliage. We considered going a bit after the peak season to avoid the crowds, but didn't want to stray too far from our anniversary. We wanted a time when it wasn't too crowded yet still close to our special day. That evening was filled with excitement about the trip. We decided to go on a weekday about a month later. Elizabeth had found that weekends and holidays were already fully booked. She was a bit disappointed, but it worked out better for me. I'll take some time off work for the trip, so don't worry, I assured her. Then came the day of our anniversary trip. Standing in front of the hotel, I was awestruck by its grandeur, far exceeding my expectations. The hotel's lavish exterior was so grand that anyone would agree it deserved its 5-star rating. The clientele coming and going were clearly of a different caliber from us. I felt embarrassed by my casual attire, not having dressed up for the occasion. Yet, Elizabeth, undaunted, casually remarked, "This is amazing, and it really is wonderful," expressing her admiration without hesitation. Soon, she grabbed my hand, somewhat dragging me to the reception, saying, "Come on, let's go in." The hotel's interior was as impressive as its exterior. The lavish decor and the demeanor of the staff raised my expectations even further. If the entrance is this grand, what will the rooms be like? I wondered, my heart racing with anticipation. Contrary to my nervousness, Elizabeth was calm, approaching the reception desk to speak with a staff member. Shortly after, she gestured for me to come over in a panicked manner. Approaching, she exclaimed, "They said we don't have a reservation." "What? How can that be?" I asked, confused by her statement. At the reception, Elizabeth explained that she had made the reservation over the phone and provided her name. The staff member quickly checked but couldn't find her name on the list of reservations. After a double check, still no record of her name was found. Elizabeth confidently asserted, "That can't be right," which seemed to put the staff in a difficult position. Then, she pulled out her phone and showed its screen to the staff. "Look, the call history is right here, isn't it?" Upon seeing this, the staff's complexion visibly changed, and they suddenly started to panic. "Excuse me for a moment," they said, before hastily retreating to the back of the reception counter, only to return shortly after in a fluster. "My apologies, it seems there was a mistake on our part." The staff then began to explain the reason for the missing reservation. It seems that this hotel handles reservation calls and computer entries separately. In other words, there seems to be a person dedicated to handling calls and another for administrative tasks. Due to the vast number of inquiries and reservations, this system makes it easier for guests to connect with the hotel. Typically, these administrative tasks fall under the manager's responsibilities, but given the manager's lack of computer skills, it seemed that errors in data entry were not uncommon. After collecting discarded reservation slips that had been processed, the staff discovered the reservation slip for Elizabeth's call. It turned out to be a data entry error. As we were discussing this, a young woman in a suit emerged from behind the reception desk. Judging by her attire, she appeared to be the aforementioned manager. She glanced at us and then spoke to the reception staff. "What's going on?" "It appears there was a mix-up on our part, and a guest's reservation was not processed." "Ah, I see. No reservation, that's problematic." Despite her confusion, the manager didn't greet us or introduce herself, which is not what you'd expect from a manager of such a prestigious hotel. Then, she turned to my wife. "I'm sorry, but there are many reservations today, and we are fully booked." "But I made a reservation. Isn't this your mistake?" "Unfortunately, we are fully booked today, and we don't have any available rooms, well, except for one room." She looked us up and down, smirking, and with a condescending attitude, she said, "The only available room is our most luxurious suite. We can offer it to you at a discount because this was our mistake, but I'm afraid it might still be too expensive for you." Indeed, the suite in this hotel seemed pricey. But if the hotel made a mistake with the reservation, it would only be right to accommodate us in that suite. Yet the manager just smirked. In a low voice, she said things like, "I doubt you can afford it, and what will you do now, since you've come all this way? Perhaps you should look for a more affordable hotel." It was truly a speechless moment. I couldn't even retort. To an outsider, Elizabeth and I might look like a couple who had saved up just for this occasion. But for a luxury hotel manager to speak to guests in such a manner was appalling. It was shocking and disappointing, especially since we had high hopes for this hotel. Soon after, Elizabeth whispered to me, "My dad used to say that you can always tell when guests are not accustomed to such places, and treating these new or inexperienced guests well is key to success. It's a shame she doesn't understand that." "Is that so?" "Yes, normally, you'd expect more attentive service in such situations, especially for new guests, but it seems she doesn't get that." Her words carried weight. After all, she is the daughter of a man who once consulted for the hospitality industry. As we spoke, the reception staff seemed to be quietly advising the manager, saying things like, "That's not a nice way to talk to them." But the manager ignored them. She didn't care about the staff's advice. Eventually, the staff gave up and started making a phone call from the counter. From what we could see, the hotel's overall service didn't seem to be the issue. Finally, the manager asked us, "So, what will you do?" As I struggled to respond, Elizabeth sighed and said, "It's a shame. We waited, but you're lacking service. You've lost everything now." The manager frowned at Elizabeth's words, not understanding what she meant, nor attempting to. That's when an older gentleman appeared and approached us. Then turned to the manager and said, "What did you say to these customers?" Well, I didn't mean." The manager became flustered all of a sudden. Sweating and turning pale, he averted his gaze. The elder gentleman then dismissed the manager, saying, "That's enough, you can step back now." Afterward, he apologized to us. "I'm terribly sorry for the oversight on our part." As the elder man was speaking, my wife let out a small, "Oh." Hearing this, the elder man stared intently at her face. Then, he hesitantly asked her, "Excuse me, but are you by any chance Charles's daughter?" "Yes, you are James, aren't you?" "I'm James. It's been a long time. I was looking forward to meeting you. How have you been?" With a smile, James then apologized to us for the manager's behavior and the reservation error. "Since it was our mistake, and considering you are Charles's daughter and her husband, please feel free to stay for 2 or 3 nights, as you wish." Saying this, the elder gentleman began to inquire with the reception staff which rooms are available. Taking this opportunity, I asked Elizabeth about the elder man's identity. "Who is he?" "James owns this hotel." "Really?" "Yes, I met James when I was little. He was a friend of my father." Is that so? Actually, I only found out that James was the owner when I was researching the hotel. When I called to make the reservation, he happened to answer the phone. We ended up talking about old times besides just the reservation. I was astonished. I was surprised not only that she knew such an influential person, but also that he was willing to offer us an extended stay just because we were related to Charles. I had newfound respect for Charles's greatness. After a short while, James, who had been talking with the reception staff, came back to us. Once again, he deeply apologized. "I'm sorry, but it seems we are fully booked today. However, the suite is available, and since it was designed by Charles, why not stay in the suite?" "Is that all right? I only booked a standard room." "Don't worry about it. It's a special occasion. Let me show you to your room." As we were being led to the suite, I decided to ask Elizabeth about the suite her father had designed. "You mentioned earlier that your father was involved in designing the suite." "Yes, remember I told you about visiting this hotel when I was watching TV. When my father was commissioned to design the suite, I came with him." By the time we finished our conversation, we had arrived at the suite. It was indeed a luxurious suite, just as the manager had mentioned. The interior was top-notch, and the view of the garden through the large glass windows was breathtaking. From the back room, we could walk directly into the well-maintained courtyard. The atmosphere was serene and relaxing. Because I was Charles's son-in-law, we were offered to stay in this room for free. It was James's way of expressing his gratitude to Charles. Initially, Elizabeth was hesitant, but James insisted, saying it was the least he could do since he couldn't attend a funeral. We thoroughly enjoyed our stay. We took a dip in the open-air bath and strolled through the courtyard. We dined at a buffet-style restaurant and cherished our time together. The manager's rude behavior soon faded from our minds. Before we knew it, it was time to check out. As we were packing up and heading to the reception, James was there waiting for us. "I'd like to have a word with you. If you could please come to the drawing room." We were then led to the drawing room. Shortly after, one of the staff brought us tea. Once the staff member had left the drawing room, James began to speak. "I'm truly sorry for what happened. I never imagined that Charles's daughter would be treated in such a manner." "Please, there's no need to apologize," Elizabeth interjected. James slowly turned to us and began to share the situation in bits and pieces. Originally, James's wife was the general manager of the hotel. However, as she aged and it became physically demanding, they decided to pass on the role to a successor. The new manager was the wife of James's son, initially a staff member at the hotel. Transitioning from a staff position to manager apparently inflated her attitude. Gradually becoming more arrogant, she started treating other staff members and eventually the guests with disdain, leading to frequent complaints. Lately, complaints from the staff were increasing, and James was contemplating taking action. This incident particularly affected him, and he was reprimanded by his son as well. The manager seemed subdued, starting from scratch with her managerial training. She's now working behind the scenes, doing the same tasks as new employees and voluntarily cleaning. I felt a bit sorry for her as the son's wife, but hearing that she might be reflecting on her actions was somewhat comforting. Anyways, putting that aside, I truly regret not attending Charles's funeral. It was our busy season, James expressed. "It's okay. I can see how much you remember and care for my father," Elizabeth replied with a smile. She shared that her father and James became acquainted during a period similar to this one, when customer service was being neglected. Despite decreasing patronage, James was the only one concerned about the declining service standards. Upon learning that Charles was a consultant, James immediately sought his advice. From him, James learned the very basics of customer service and passed this knowledge to all staff. which eventually helped regain the hotel's reputation as a luxury establishment. In the end, James apologized to us repeatedly until we left. He also kept saying thank you over and over again. Elizabeth must feel a deep sense of loss for her beloved father's early departure. It's evident from her tears whenever his story is told. But even in his absence, his legacy lives on through those who cherish his principles, spreading his influence far and wide. This brought joy to Elizabeth. A year later, during a visit to Charles's grave, I silently watched Elizabeth. Being with her, I feel such happiness. Perhaps it's because she is your daughter, inheriting your way of life. I reflected on my days with Elizabeth, sharing these thoughts with Charles.